is from back in the day, from when? 1989, when I started getting into, I've always been kind of traditional because I believed this is the rites founded by Apostolic tradition, Eastern rites, Western rites. The old Fatima Crusader from days of Father Gruner, 1989. So they had like an article in two issues. Let Catholics Have the Traditional Mass, written by Father Paul Kramer. So in other than this article, there was on page 24, 1989, Traditional Mass Never Suppressed. And that was a papal commission of 9 cardinals determines. So that's from 1989, and probably Cardinal Ratzinger was one of these cardinals. And in it says, so they asked them, did Paul VI authorize the bishops to forbid the celebration of the traditional Mass? The answer was no. Bishops can't forbid the celebration of the ancient Christian Mass because all Paul VI was introduced his own new rite. He didn't abrogate the ancient liturgy. So the commission, I'm going to read you here, the commission unanimously determined that Paul VI never gave the bishops the authority to forbid priests from celebrating the traditional rite of Mass. Regarding the second question, which was, does the priest have the right to celebrate the traditional Mass in public and in private without restrictions, even against the will of the bishop, which is basically what Summorum Pontificum of Pope Benedict XVI basically declared, because it has never been abrogated, and every priest of the Roman Rite can celebrate the liturgy of the Roman Church. Regarding the second, the commission stated that the priest cannot be obliged to celebrate the new rite of Mass. The bishops cannot forbid or place restrictions on the celebration of the traditional rite of Mass, whether in public or in private. So this commission, so after John Paul II published his Motu Proprio Ecclesia Dei Afflicta, appointed a commission of 9 cardinals about the traditional Mass, and some of the cardinals included Cardinal Casaroli, Ganten, and 7 other cardinals of the Roman Curia. And all right. So anyway, so this shows you that has never been suppressed, never been abrogated. All right, I had to pause the recording for a bit, so I hope I remember where I stopped. So as I was saying, it was the article from 1989 or 80, whatever, is Let Catholics Have the Traditional Mass. And Father Paul Kramer, well, we saw the Commission of Cardinals, which is confirmed by Benedict XVI, that the traditional missal has never been abrogated. So here you go. So anyways, he deals with this article about the abrogation and non-abrogation of Paul VI in his Constitutional Missale Romanum. I'm not sure if I'm going to deal with it here. I'm going to say a couple of lines from it. It says, all the new legislation enacted by Paul VI only derogates the previous legislation which would have prohibited the new rite, but nowhere does any of Paul VI's legislation even presume to abrogate, or in any manner abolish the provisions of quo primum, which, as I said, is the decree of Pius V, which explicitly give and grant, as in quotation marks, give and grant in perpetuity, that for the singing or reading of the Mass in any church whatsoever, this missal, the Tridentine Missal, may be followed absolutely without any scruple of conscience or fear of incurring any penalty, judgment, censure, and may be freely, lawfully used. So anyways, I'm not going to go through the article because basically we have the confirmation of this fact by Pope Benedict XVI that has never been abolished or abrogated, which is not possible. I can't abrogate and abolish an apostolic rite and invent a new one and say that's the only rite you're going to use. Then you tell the Pope, it's like, hey, know your role and shut your mouth because you have no such power. You have no such power. All right, so let's go with Dr. Kwasniewski. They have it on Rite, the kind of his article. It's actually based upon his lecture at the Roman Forum run by the Remnant newspaper. So Beyond Summorum Pontificum. Full text. So anyways, there's a link here. If you go to Rite, you can find the link to the video. And I'm going to actually play his video. And just the important thing about whether the Pope even has the ability. Is it even licit for the Pope to basically abolish the traditional rite? Let's see if I have his. Oh, here we go. All right, so let's play him. I hope he doesn't kind of. All right, let me see if I can hear him.
Accordingly, the traditionalist movement must, I believe, take much more seriously the question of whether or not the Novus Ordo or any of
Here you go. You can see actually the writing on the left, so you can listen to him and read it here.
the new rites is canonically licit.
Here we go.
Now, I say licit. I'm not talking about validity here, so don't misunderstand me. Does a pope have the authority to do what Paul VI did? That's the question. We are not asking if he can pretend to have the authority, expending 1,000 years of political capital to demand the hierarchy and the faithful to be obedient and receptive to that which undermines their obedience and vitiates their receptivity to tradition. Nor are we asking what Paul VI subjectively thought he was doing or capable of doing, nor of what bishops and the rest of the faithful subjectively thought they were doing or ought to do in response to the imposition of new rites that have more in common with Cranmer and Pistoia than with Cluny and Trent. Rather, we should be asking whether objectively a pope actually has the right, R-I-G-H-T, to substitute new rites for the rites organically developed within the Catholic Church over her entire history. Subjective intentions can be messy and confused, but objectively, the liturgical revolution separated Catholics from their own tradition, from orthodoxy as rite worship, and therefore sundered the lex orandi from the lex credendi, or rather reconfigured their relationship such that the magisterium of the moment became the norm of prayer. In my opinion, if such a rupture can be seen as legitimate and licit, then there are no longer any norms or objective principles of liturgy left. Everything has been reduced to the mere exercise of the papacy in any way it pleases. Rather, this rupture created an internal schism, and that is why it may be necessary to see it as illicit, that is, having no force of law behind it, but being in fact an abuse of power with no objective legal standing. I cannot here lay out the full argument, but I recommend for further consideration, at least as a point of departure, the provocative thesis of Father Gregory Hess, who argues that Trent's condemnation of any pastor whatsoever, per quem cumque ecclesiarum pastorem, changing the Church's rites into new rites, applies to the Pope as well. That the constant inclusion of quo primum in every edition of the Missal, in addition to any new bulls, indicates that it was seen as a dogmatically freighted canonization of the content and form of the Roman rite of Mass. That we should take seriously the teaching of Cardinal Juan de Torquemada, who wrote, 15th century, who wrote that if a pope fails to observe, quote, the universal rite of ecclesiastical worship and divides himself with pertinacity from the observances of the universal church, he is able to fall into schism and is neither to be obeyed nor put up with. Non est sustinendus, unquote.
Neither to be obeyed or to be put up with. And that's exactly what should be done. Neither to be obeyed or to be put up with. We're not going to put up with this human excrement, which is masquerading as apostolic power. Anyways, so... and he says, Dr. Kwasniewski, yeah, we should take this thing, first, No pope, it is illicit. So when Jorge says, well, you gotta say that uh, the fabricated liturgy of the new rite, the novelty, the innovation of Paul VI, the rite of Paul VI is licit and valid. Well, we can say it's valid. Licit, well, should we be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves and say, well, sure, yeah, well, I guess it's authorized, so it's licit? Well, it could be licit in an introduction of a new rite, but it is not licit in the sense that it can replace the real Roman rite. Well, maybe a pope has the power to introduce a rite, but he has definitely no power in eliminating the ancient liturgy. So if we take it in that sense, we can say, well, sure, it's licit. But in reality, it is illicit because no pope has the right to impose upon the universal church a fabricated liturgy, a novelty, a new liturgical innovation, a new liturgical novelty, which he himself admits, a new rite to replace the original rite. So he says, well, take the arguments of Father Gregory Hess about the Council of Trent's condemnation that any pastor whatsoever basically cannot change the received rites of the Holy Church and replace them with new ones. Nope, that includes if it's any pastor whatsoever, that includes the Pope, because he's the pastor of pastors, isn't he? So any and all pastors. And actually this is is basically reiterated in the creed, the infallible creed of faith of the Council of Trent, which is basically the same one repeated at the First Vatican Council. And we're going to see what Father Klaus Gamber says about it, and actually Father Paul Kramer in his article about the traditional Mass. He cites Torquemada, which Dr. Kwasniewski talks about. So let us look at what the Council of Trent in its creed, by definition, a creed is infallible, states. So it says, I, with firm of faith, believe and profess everything that is contained in this creed. And what are some of the things contained in this profession of faith of the Council of Trent, the creed of the Council of Trent, the creed of Pope Pius V of Pius, I can't even see it from my screen. I've got wires and stuff on my screen. But anyways, the creed of the Tridentine Creed, which basically is talking about the Council of Trent, the creed of the Council of Trent. So let's see what the creed says. So the creed, I already said it. I so and so believe, hold, and profess basically everything contained in this creed. And what are the things which are contained in the creed, in the dogma of faith professed by the Council of Trent? The apostolic and ecclesiastical traditions. Here it is in Latin. So apostolic and ecclesiastical traditions and all other observances and constitutions of the same church I firmly admit and embrace. So ecclesiastical traditions and apostolic traditions are not invented by a pope upon the recommendation of liturgical experts. No, they are received, preserved, and passed on. And what else? It says, I also receive and admit. I receive. I don't invent and create and try to suppress. No, I receive and admit the accepted and approved ceremonies, which means the traditional rites. And actually it does here in Latin, it is rites, ritus, traditional rites of the Catholic Church in the solemn administration of the aforesaid sacraments, meaning the sacrament of confirmation, Eucharist, penance, Mass, holy orders, matrimony, all the sacraments. So what is in the creed of the Council of Trent? What does it say? I also receive and admit the accepted and approved rites and ceremonies, ritus, of the Catholic Church, which exist where and how are they used in the administration of the sacraments. So this is part of the faith. And this true Catholic faith, outside of which no one can be saved, which I now freely profess and to which I firmly adhere, I do so profess and swear to maintain inviolate. Paul VI did not do that, obviously, and with firm constancy with the help of God until the last breath of life. So we see in the Creed of the Council of Trent, and that creed is basically, for all intents and purposes, repeated in, now where are we here? In the decrees, the Creed of the Council of the First Vatican Council. Again. And why do you think it says about maintaining the accepted rites and ceremonies used in administration of the sacrament, apostolic and ecclesiastical traditions? Because at that time, the Protestant innovators were changing and altering and deleting and simplifying the received and approved rites of the Catholic Church used in the administration of the sacraments. That is why. So the faith is to maintain, to preserve, to pass on, not to alter, innovate, and deform. So 6th January 1870, Profession of Faith, First Vatican Council, which is basically identical to that of the Council of Trent. And what is part of the faith professed? Which is the profession of faith which the Holy Roman Church uses. Among the profession of faith is number 2, apostolic and ecclesiastical traditions, and all other observances and constitutions of that same church I most firmly accept and embrace. So that goes for every liturgical rite. So a Greek Melkite must hold on to his liturgy. A Coptic Orthodox Coptic Catholic must hold to the Coptic liturgy in its entirety. An Armenian must hold to the Armenian rites in their entirety. I likewise receive, number 5, and accept the rites of the Catholic Church which have been received, not invented, not created out of nothing, and approved in the solemn administration of all the aforesaid sacraments, which are baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, penance, last anointing, meaning extreme unction, order, meaning holy orders, minor and major, and matrimony. So, again, likewise, all other things which have been transmitted, defined, and declared by the sacred canons and the ecumenical councils, especially the Sacred Trent, I accept unhesitantly and profess. This true Catholic faith, outside which none can be saved. So, and we heard Dr. Kwasniewski, if I'm saying his name correctly, refer us to Professor Hess, Father Hess, about the stipulation, the canon of the Council of Trent, that nobody, no pastor whatsoever, whosoever can alter or the received rites of the Catholic Church. That is why it's in the Creed of the Council of Trent. So it is not a matter of his opinion, but it's confirmed by Trent itself through the Creed, and by Vatican I itself through the Creed. So this one, I've shown you this book before previously. The Decrees of the Ecumenical Councils, this volume 2. It's a 2-volume set, has the decrees of all the ecumenical councils from Nicaea up to and including the pastoral, non-dogmatic Vatican II. So, I might have to wear my glasses for this one, but it is in session 7. I found an online thing, but this one is a better translation. So you see the Latin on one side, the English on the other side. I don't know if you can see it or not, but let's see here. Anyway, so that is where the section comes from. And I will wear my glasses for this one because I don't want to be squinting too much. So let's hope these glasses are okay. All right. So it is First Decree on the Sacraments, Session 7, 3 March 1547. Another phone call. Let's continue, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. So it is the first session. Let's make sure I didn't stop anything. All right, everything's good. So the most holy sacraments, what is this? So it's basically a general agreement to treat the most holy sacraments of the church, by means of which all true justness either begins or, once received, gains strength, or if lost, is restored. So the point of this is to remove errors and rooting out heresies. By adhering to the teaching of the Holy Scriptures, the Apostolic traditions, and the common opinion of other councils and of fathers, this council has established and formally decreed the canons here set out. Later, with the help of the Divine Spirit, it will publish others which remain for the completion of the work begun. So canons on the sacraments in general. So it is number, let's see here, which I think it's number, well, in number 2 it says, if anyone says that those same sacraments of the new law, oh no, that's not matter. Let's see here. Let's found it. It is number 13, which I read, as I said previously, read that thing a long time ago, page to page from all the councils. So even before hearing about what Father Hess and Dr. Kwasniewski said, Kwasinski was whatever. So anyways, if anyone says that this received and approved, not the invented and created, the received and approved rites of the Catholic Church in customary use, immemorial custom, customary use in the solemn administration of the sacraments. So all these immemorial rites, customary use, used by the Catholic Church in the administration of the sacraments may, without sin, be neglected or omitted, or omitted at choice by ministers, or can be changed. This is the key. Or can be changed to other new ones, which is what Paul VI attempted to do, but he still called it the new rite. So or can be changed. Like, if one can even say that these rites, these ancient rites, can be changed to other new ones by any pastor, whatever, let him be anathema. So any pastor whatsoever. So as Father Hesse and that includes the Pope, because the Pope is a pastor. He's a pastor of pastors. So nobody has the right to alter the ancient rites of the church and replace them with new ones, creations out of nothing, taking them and deforming the ancient rites and giving us a new rite, a novelty, a great innovation, using the words of Paul VI himself. I'm not making it up, but that's what happened. So no Pope can illicitly alter the rites and give us brand new ones and force us to take them. Now, we're going to almost finish up now. Here's back to Monsignor Klaus Gamber. And he will mention a couple of citations from which he doesn't refer to them specifically, but as I said in the article by Father Kramer, Catholics have the traditional Mass in the old Fatima Crusader from 1989. When I find something so valuable, I don't throw it away. So in his footnotes, footnote number 20, He talks about Cardinal Torquemada, which Dr. Kwasinski talks about. So he says, besides this canon, it should also be noted that it is the teaching of both Suarez and Cardinal Torquemada that by the attempt to suppress the traditional liturgy of the Church, one falls into schism. Cardinal Juan de Torquemada, 1388 to 1468, in two of his documents, Commentary in Decretum Gratiani and Summa de Ecclesia, wrote, in this way, the Pope could, without doubt, fall into schism, especially especially is this true with regard to the divine liturgy, especially for the divine liturgy. As, for example, if he did not wish personally to follow the universal customs and rites of the Church. Thus it is that Innocent states Pope Innocent states that it is necessary to obey a pope in all things, as long as he does not himself go against universal customs of the Church. But should he go against universal customs of the Church, he need not be followed. And he's quoting a pope here. And then Francisco Suarez in 1548 to 1617, called by Pope Paul V, Doctor Eximus et Pius, excellent and pious doctor, usually considered the greatest theologian of the Society of Jesus. So what does Francisco Suarez say? A pope falls into schism if he departs himself from the body of the Church by refusing to be in communion with her. And as well, what else? The Pope can become a schismatic in this manner if he does not wish to be in proper communion with the body of the Church, a situation which would arise if he tried to excommunicate the entire Church, or as both Cajetan and Torquemada observe, if he wished to, listen to this, if he wished to change all the ecclesiastical ceremonies founded as they are on apostolic tradition. There you go. No, he can't. So professions of faith, canons of the Council of Trent, and here we'll finish it up before we finish up with Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre for his final commentary. Back to the Roman liturgy of the deform of the Roman liturgy, its problems and background by Monsignor Klaus Gamber, which Ratzinger highly recommended. Here we go. So this is, I'm going to read a bit of it. Let's see. From page 32. My page 32. I don't know if they published it again or not, but from my page 32. Again, I read that a long time ago. But anyways, let's see here. He asked the question, does the Pope have the authority to change a liturgical rite founded on apostolic tradition and developed over many centuries? We have already discussed this. So he says, we have already discussed and shown that in the past, the Church hierarchy did not exercise a strong influence in the development of liturgical forms. They were not made up by the hierarchy. They were received by apostolic tradition and grew. It simply sanctioned the rite that grew out of local custom, and even the Church practice of officially sanctioning rite emerged relatively late. Only after the printed liturgical books became popular in the West. Not even before printing did the Church approve a certain rite. A rite grew up in the cathedrals and the churches, and it was held. I mean, the sad thing is the Emperor Charles Charlemagne forced the abandonment of the Gallican rite and forced his priests to follow the Roman usage instead of following their liturgical heritage, which is a sad loss. In the West, okay, let's see. Again, when they say about the supervision of the liturgy, it does not mean inventing new things. It says here, in the West, the practice began the Council of Trent, and it is defined in Article 22 of the Constitution of Sacred Liturgy, referring to Canon 1257 of the Codex Iuris Canonici. It says, the supervision of the sacred liturgy depends solely on the authority of the Church, which resides in the Apostolic See, and in accord with the law, which with the diocesan bishop. Therefore, no other person, not even blah, blah, blah. The council, now Klaus Gomber continues, the council did not elaborate on what the term supervision of the sacred liturgy means. Sacra liturgiae moderatio means, if we consider the past practices and customs, however, the term cannot mean the type of sweeping revisions of the Mass ritual and the alteration of liturgical texts that we are now experiencing. So rather, we must understand the real meaning in a larger context. Above all, the Council Fathers were intent on preventing every priest from devising the liturgical rite on his own authority, of which, of course, is exactly what is happening today, including the Pachamama scandals and every liturgical innovation possible under the sun. Anyways, I'm going to skip a whole bunch of stuff here, but let's go with the meat of the answer, which is here, page 34. The publication of the Novus Ordo Missae of 1969, however, created a new liturgical rite. And this is not Klaus Gomber just saying it. Paul VI himself. Paul VI himself, we saw himself calling it a new rite, a new order, a novelty, an innovation. So we're not putting words here in the mouth of Paul. We're not being unfair. This is a fact. So, however, he created a new liturgical rite. In other words, the traditional liturgical rite has not simply been revised as the council had intended, rather it has been completely abolished, or attempted to be abolished. And a couple of years later, the traditional liturgical rite has in fact been forbidden. Again, I'm skipping a bunch here. The argument could be made that the Pope's authority to introduce a new liturgical rite, that is, to do so without a decision of the council, can be derived from full and highest power. So that's why if we assume he has that power, we can say, well, maybe the new rite is licit in that sense, but it is definitely not licit as a replacement to the real Roman rite. However, the term disciplina, which is in no way applies. So about the, it says here, i.e. power over matters, quoting Vatican I, which are that pertain to the discipline and rule of the Church spread all over the world, the power of the Pope. However, the term disciplina in no way applies to the liturgical rite of the Mass, particularly in the fact that the popes have repeatedly observed that the rite is founded in an apostolic tradition. And he has quotes from ancient popes. Pope Innocent I demanded a uniform rite in his letter to the Bishop of Gubo in 402. And then he says basically he says about the rite received, he says, is to be from the Prince of the Apostles, Church of Rome, by Peter, the Prince of the Apostles, is kept even now, ought to be preserved by all. And then quotes another quote that the rites we have come from apostolic tradition, ancient popes. So for this reason alone, the rite cannot fall into the category of discipline and rule of the Church under the power of the Pope. To this, we can add that there is not a single document, including the Codex Iuris Canonici, the Code of Canon Law, either the 1917 or the 1983, in which there is a specific statement that the Pope, in his function as the supreme pastor of the Church, has the authority to abolish the traditional liturgical rite. In fact, nowhere is it mentioned that the Pope has the authority to change even a single local liturgical tradition. He doesn't even have that authority. The fact that there is no mention of such authority strengthens our case considerably. There are clearly defined limits to the plena et suprema potestas, the full and highest powers of the Pope. It's not unlimited, as Pope Benedict XVI said. The Pope is not an absolute monarch. His will is not law, but he is subject to tradition, subject to the scriptures, subject to the teaching of the Church. In fact, there are several authors. This is important here, again from Klaus Gamper. In fact, there are several authors who state quite explicitly that it is clearly outside the Pope's scope of authority to abolish the traditional rite or to restrict it. You can't restrict an apostolic rite, a heritage of the Church. Thus, the eminent theologian Suarez, who died in 1617, citing even earlier authors such as Cajetan, who died in 1534, took the position that a Pope would be a schismatic, and quoting him now, if he, as is his duty, would not be in full communion with the body of the Church, or, for example, if he were to excommunicate the entire Church, or if he were to change all the liturgical rites of the Church that have been upheld by apostolic tradition, he would be a schismatic. As we have explained, the issue of unlimited papal authority and how it relates to the authority to change the established liturgical rite. If the statement made by Suarez still is not entirely convincing, this argument just may be already established fact that until Paul VI, there has not been a single pope who introduced the type of fundamental changes in the liturgical forms which we are now witnessing. In fact, we must note that even small changes in the liturgy introduced by a pope have never been readily accepted. And he gives an example of St. Gregory the Great and what he did. So here you go. So no, a pope can be a schismatic if he attempts to abolish the rites or to change them and replace them with new fabricated liturgy, which Paul VI did, and which Jorge is attempting to reimpose. So here you go. So basically, making it nice and simple, ignore every word that the Bishop Justin White says regarding to the traditional liturgy. If you're a priest, say it. If you're a bishop, continue to say it, or even found new orders which will say it. Let's see what Jorge will do. What is he going to do? Suspend you? Well, fine, because now you are obeying God rather than men. You are obeying the Church rather than, one can say, a usurper who is attempting to subvert the Church. This is, even according to Benedict, and has not been altered by Francis, the Missal has never been abrogated, because you cannot abrogate the traditional rite. And as such, it is legal and lawful in every way. Unlike the fabricated new rite, novelty, innovation of Paul VI, pretending to be the ordinary form, the fake Roman rite, which has no basis in history. We will end it with the statement, the very long statement of Cardinal Burke. Not the whole statement, just again the authority of the Pope. Number 15. But can, and remember, Cardinal Burke was the supreme head of the Apostolic Signatura, which is like the Supreme Court of the Vatican. So he knows the codes of canon law, the ancient laws of the Church. So he's not nobody. He's not some cardinal. He's not some bishop. He was the former head of the Apostolic Signatura. Until, of course, Jorge removed him. But can the Roman Pontiff juridically, legally, abrogate the usus antiquator, like the old rite, the ancient rite. The fullness of power, plenitudo potestatis, which we just mentioned here, right? Of the Roman pontiff is the power necessary to defend and promote doctrine and discipline of the church. It is not absolute power, which would include the power to change doctrine, as again we quoted right there, Klaus Gamber, or to eradicate a liturgical discipline, which has been active in the church since the time of Pope Gregory the Great and even earlier. The correct interpretation of Article 1 cannot be, which says, the new fabricated liturgy of Paul VI is the only law of prayer of the Church, of the Roman Rite, cannot be the denial that the old Rite is an ever vital expression of the lex orandi of the Roman Rite. An ever vital. Our Lord, who gave the wonderful gift of the ancient rite, because of it comes from apostolic tradition, from Saints Peter and Paul, will not permit it to be eradicated, will not permit it to eradicate it from the life of the church. So he clearly says, the Pope does not have the power, no Pope has the power to abolish an apostolic liturgical rite, or discipline even. And so his full power, his supreme and full power over discipline, does not include abolishing an apostolic liturgical rite, which goes with Suarez, Cajetan, Torquemada, Klaus Gamber, the creed, the canon of one of the canons on the Sacraments of the Council of Trent, and the creed, the dogma, the doctrinal creed, an infallible declaration of faith, the creed of the Council of Trent, the profession of faith of the Council of Trent. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. We have discussed why they hate the ancient Roman Rite. Why do they hate it? People like Hannibal the Little Bug and Francis and the innovators and the promoters of the novelties. They hate it not because it's Latin. They hate it because lex orandi, as suddenly the modernists have discovered that. Lex orandi, lex credendi. The law of prayer, the law of faith. How you pray will profoundly affect what you believe. And what you believe will affect how you live. That is the reason they want to abolish the apostolic rite of the Roman Church. That is why they want to force us to adhere to the liturgical innovation of the new rite, the novelty of Paul VI, because it conveys a novel, a new understanding. Oh, I closed it. Tommy Rees as well. I remember I forgot something. Thomas Rees there in his article. He says, and we need to revise our liturgies, the canon, on the part of the canon of the Mass. We need to revise it to reflect our new understanding of the Eucharist, our new understanding. Meaning, well, I guess for 1970 years, we understood the Eucharist wrong, and now we have a new understanding, which we have to alter the Mass, the liturgy, and the canon to reflect this new understanding. New understanding of the ecclesiology, and new understanding of the Eucharist. You understand now why they hate the ancient liturgy. But we say, whatever, man. We will stay calm and carry on. And any priest, all priests, must adhere to the Roman Rite. Priests adhere to the Roman Rite, to the real Roman Rite, not to the fake fabrication of Paul VI. Anyways, I've said enough. That's it. That's all. And I'll see you soon with another video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And See you next time. Bye-bye.